Stop, what are you doing? A high-pitched alien voice screeched, echoing through the metallic corridor. A pair of clawed hands hovered over a glowing, pulsing orb. The orb had a strange warmth, almost alive. The alien pupils froze, their tentacles quivering in terror. The human teacher's voice cut through the tension, calm yet terrifyingly confident. I told you. You're not ready to see this, but now, you are. The aliens, hailing from the planet Clyther, had come to Earth for a single purpose: education. They were the brightest minds of their species, chosen to learn about the civilizations across the galaxy. They had traveled light years to witness humanity firsthand, believing themselves superior, eager to catalog a species they assumed primitive. Yet here they were, shaking in a classroom they had assumed would be a dull showcase of human history and technology. Instead, the human, whom they called instructor, was showing them something that made even their multi-eyed, multi-brained species recoil. The room was dark except for the orb. It pulsed with an unnatural glow, displaying images that shifted faster than any alien eye could follow. War zones, disease, famine. Faces frozen in fear, despair, and rage. Humans hurting humans. Humans fighting, destroying, and yet surviving. Is this normal? One alien whispered. Their voice cracked like ice under pressure. The humans shook their heads slowly. You've only seen our inventions, our cities, our games. You've seen the shiny parts. You've never understood what it took for us to get here. And now you're going to see everything else. Another alien stumbled back, their legs tangling in panic. This is horror. Why do you survive? The human stepped closer, eyes like iron and fire. Because survival is in our blood. Because no matter what you throw at us, no matter how impossible, humans keep going. You think this is terrifying? This is just the beginning. The aliens' tentacles twitched uncontrollably. Every one of them felt something their species had no word for, an instinctual fear wrapped in awe. The fear was personal, primal. It crawled through their neural cores like electricity. They had studied countless species before. None had endured what humans endured and still thrived. You'll see, the human said, why Earth has remained untamed for billions of years, why it will continue to do so, long after others have fallen. This planet, this species, is not what you expect. A sudden noise erupted from the orb, a violent screech that made the aliens recoil and cover their ears. Images of humans fighting massive beasts flashed across the room. Entire forests fell to human ingenuity. Ships collided. Storms ravaged coasts. Yet humans adapted, built, fought, and survived. One alien finally spoke, voice trembling like thin glass. But they are so fragile. How can they even... The human smiled faintly, almost sadly. Fragile? Look closer. Watch carefully. You're seeing fragility, yes, but also resilience beyond comprehension. You think you've traveled across stars to study a simple species? You are wrong. You're here to witness a force you will never understand. Silence fell. The orb dimmed slightly, but the images lingered in the minds of the aliens. No data chip, no catalog, no holographic simulation could prepare them for this. Fear was not enough of a word. Reverence, awe, terror. It all merged into a single suffocating reality. Finally, the smallest alien, barely able to speak, whispered, We are not ready for this. The human crouched, looking each of them in their countless eyes. No one ever is. But now, you know. And knowing changes everything. Outside, the winds of Earth howled against the classroom walls, carrying with them the promise of storms, earthquakes, wars, and survival. The aliens had thought themselves teachers, scholars, conquerors of knowledge. Now they were pupils of a species that might just redefine what it meant to be alive. And the lesson was only beginning. The classroom fell into a heavy silence, the kind that presses against every limb, every thought. The aliens' hearts, if they could be called hearts, pounded in ways they had never experienced. Their instructor hovered near the orb, fingers brushing its surface, and the images shifted. This time the humans were no longer just fighting nature. They were fighting each other. Cities burned. Machines clashed. Desperate men, women, and children struggled against one another for food, for shelter, for survival. Entire landscapes vanished under human ambition and folly. The youngest alien whimpered. They destroy themselves. Why? Why would they do this? The human's voice was calm, but it cut through the room like a blade. Because they choose to. Because every human, at some point, faces the darkness inside themselves, and they survive. That is what makes them dangerous. That is what makes them human. Another alien tried to speak, voice shaking. But this is chaos. They are fragile. How do they last? The human stepped closer to the orb. Images of humanity rising from disasters replaced the destruction. A city rebuilt from rubble, a child finding food for their family, strangers helping strangers through fire and flood. Fragile, perhaps, but every time the world tries to break them, they find a way. Every time, without fail. The aliens exchanged glances, uncertainty and fear mixing in their tentacles. Their entire education had been a series of calculations, probabilities, and simulations. Humans defied all predictions. They weren't merely resilient, they were unpredictable, relentless, and astonishingly adaptive. The smallest alien shook. This is not just survival. This is courage, but courage against what? The human turned to face them fully, eyes glowing in the dim light. Against everything. Against themselves. Against nature, against each other, against the universe. You've studied the stars, seen civilizations rise and fall. None of them faced the challenges humans do, and none have endured as long. Humans are not just survivors. Humans are a force of nature. Images shifted again. A storm the size of continents battered a coastal city. Buildings collapsed. Rivers overflowed. Yet humans ran, climbed, fought, built dams, dug trenches, carried one another to safety. And when the storm passed, they rebuilt. Not because it was easy, not because they were guided by instinct alone, but because they chose to. One alien murmured almost to themselves, They will not be stopped. They will adapt to everything. Exactly, said the human. And that is why you are terrified. You came here thinking you were scholars. You came here thinking humans were simple, predictable. You were wrong. Humans survive the impossible and they do it again and again. There is no measure for them, no limit, no boundary you can calculate. The room grew heavier as the aliens absorbed the reality of what they were witnessing. It was one thing to study humans from a distance, to record their achievements, to note their technological advancements. It was another to see the raw, unfiltered truth. Humans thrived in chaos, weaponized their flaws, and still endured. One alien, braver, or perhaps more foolish, asked, But if they are so resilient, why haven't they conquered the galaxy? Why do they still fight among themselves? The human smiled faintly, almost mournfully, because that is part of what makes them human. They are not perfect. They are messy, emotional, flawed, but in those flaws lies their greatest strength. A calculated species could destroy itself in predictability. Humans destroy themselves and rise again unpredictably. That is their power. That is why Earth has not fallen to any force. That is why humanity endures where others fail. A long silence followed. The aliens stared at the orb, at the chaos, at the determination. Some of them trembled. Others felt a strange spark deep in their neural cores. A mixture of fear, awe, and a grudging respect that bordered on worship. The human stepped back, letting the orb dim slightly. Now you know, and knowing changes how you see everything. You will never look at this planet, at this species, the same way again. The youngest alien lowered their gaze, trembling. We thought we were teachers. But we are pupils now, and the lesson. It terrifies us. The human nodded as if this had been expected all along. Good, let it terrify you. Because understanding humans is not a matter of knowledge. It is a matter of respect. And respect comes with fear. Outside, the wind moaned over the forests and mountains of Earth, carrying with it the sounds of rivers, storms, and life. The aliens had come expecting a simple lesson. Instead, they had encountered a force of nature, the human spirit, and the class had only just begun. The orb's light pulsed again, stronger this time, as if alive, sensing the fear and fascination in the alien pupils. The images were no longer just destruction, they were strategies, ideas, and solutions. Humans improvising in ways the aliens had never imagined. A massive flood swallowed half a city, sweeping debris and cars into the raging waters. The aliens gasped collectively. Their species had never seen creatures respond so quickly to disaster. Humans formed chains, dug trenches, built barriers, and guided the helpless to safety, all in the span of hours. Every act was chaotic, imperfect, but effective. They just adapt. One alien whispered, their voice trembling, tentacles curling inward. They don't wait for orders. They think, they act. They survive. The human stepped forward, placing a hand on the orb. Humans are brilliant in ways your calculations cannot predict. You think power comes from superior strength, faster reflexes, or advanced technology. But humans, they take nothing for granted and they turn nothing to waste. When the world breaks, they break it further and then build something better. Another image appeared, a battlefield strewn with wreckage. Robots, machines, even natural predators hunted humans relentlessly. The aliens stiffened. Humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched, but they adapted. Makeshift weapons, traps, and clever tactics turned their disadvantage into a weapon. They used their environment, their ingenuity, and their courage to survive against all odds. One alien muttered, "This is unfair. No species could withstand this." The human's eyes glinted. "You think it's unfair? It's inevitable. Humans survive not because they are stronger, faster, or smarter in the ways you expect. They survive because they refuse to quit. That refusal, that relentless drive, it cannot be calculated, predicted, or replicated. You are witnessing the heart of our species." A sudden shift in the orb brought images of humans saving others, not for gain, not for glory, but because they chose to. A mother shielded her child from falling debris. Strangers pulled one another from collapsing buildings. A small group created a makeshift bridge to save trapped villagers from a burning town. Every act was flawed, dangerous, chaotic, yet undeniably effective. They risked themselves for each other. A tentacle-twisting alien stammered, "They care, in ways we cannot." The human's voice softened, almost sorrowful. "Yes, that is one of humanity's most terrifying secrets. Humans are unpredictable, chaotic, and flawed, but they are also compassionate. Even when faced with death, even when the world offers nothing, they reach out to help one another. That is what makes them unstoppable." The aliens' fear deepened. Their minds, trained for logic, for strategy, for precision, could not contain the raw, erratic force of human creativity and empathy. Every disaster, every impossible scenario the aliens had studied, every calculation had underestimated humanity's capacity to respond and to triumph. One alien's multifaceted eyes glimmered with disbelief. They turned disaster into advantage. Every failure, every weakness, becomes strength. How can they be so relentless? The human took a deep breath, gaze fixed on the pupils. Because humans understand something your species may never grasp. Life is fragile. Life is fleeting. But humans fight for it anyway. Every invention, every battle, every challenge, they face it head on. They do not wait for certainty. They do not rely solely on rules. They act, they persist, they endure. And through that, they become more than a species. They become a force. The aliens felt it now, not just fear, but awe that bordered on reverence. Their calculations, their predictions, their pride in their intellectual superiority all crumbled under the weight of what humans were capable of. A species so messy, so fragile, so flawed, yet capable of adapting, creating, and surviving beyond all logic. A sudden alarm echoed from the orb. Another disaster flashed across its light, a volcanic eruption threatening an entire city. The aliens flinched, expecting catastrophe and defeat, but humans were already in motion. Makeshift shelters, evacuation plans, emergency signals. Chaos became choreography. Panic became strategy. Fear became action. One alien's voice cracked in awe. They are alive in ways we cannot measure. They do not merely survive, they conquer even the impossible." The human nodded slowly. "Yes, and that terrifies you, doesn't it?" Every pupil shivered, understanding for the first time the true scope of what they were witnessing. Humans were not just survivors of nature and circumstance. They were unpredictable, irrepressible, and utterly fearless in their refusal to succumb. The orb dimmed, leaving only the silence of comprehension. The aliens sat frozen, tentacles entwined, minds racing. They had thought themselves teachers. They had thought themselves observers of a simple species. But now they knew the truth. Humans were something else entirely. Something terrifyingly magnificent. And the lesson was far from over. The aliens had thought they were prepared. They had studied civilizations that spanned countless worlds, watched species rise and fall and prided themselves on understanding the limits of life itself. Yet every assumption they held about strength, strategy, and survival began to crumble under the light of the human orb. The classroom was quiet, almost suffocatingly so. The human's presence loomed over them, calm, unshakable, like a predator observing prey that had no idea it was already cornered. The orb flared once more, projecting not just chaos but strategy on a scale the aliens had never imagined. Entire continents of humans were shown coordinating with precision, yet without central control. During a massive global famine, millions adapted overnight. New crops, new irrigation, new ways to survive appeared not because a central authority demanded it, but because humans saw a need and acted. They organized themselves. Without orders? A pupil hissed, disbelief twisting their voice. How is that possible? The human's voice was low, almost a whisper. Because they understand necessity. They understand survival. And they understand each other. They adapt as a unit, yet act as individuals. You will not find another species capable of this combination. Never. The images shifted again. Humans facing overwhelming predators, hostile alien fauna, and deadly environmental shifts. Each time humans were outmatched. Each time they improvised. Rock and fire became weapons. Collapsed structures became fortresses. Desperation became invention. The aliens' multiple eyes tracked every movement, unable to predict the outcome. They are unstoppable, a senior pupil admitted, their voice cracking. Even against forces we would destroy? Exactly, the human said, stepping closer to the group. They do not need to be perfect. They do not need to be invincible. They only need to refuse defeat. Every flaw, every weakness you've cataloged, they use it. And every time it works. The orb shifted again, showing humans in warfare. Not wars of conquest, but wars of survival. Entire civilizations had risen from the ashes of devastation. Humans had fought each other, fought nature, fought disease, fought invaders from space, and every time they rose. Wounds healed, cities were rebuilt. Knowledge lost in disaster was regained, often improved upon. One alien covered their eyes with a tentacle. They should not exist. None of this should be possible. The human's gaze softened, almost regretful. That's the point. Humans are not supposed to be predictable. They are not supposed to follow logic. They are chaos given form, resilience given purpose. You cannot calculate them. You cannot control them. You cannot... A sudden burst of images cut the sentence short. Humans in space. Humans colonizing harsh planets. Humans harnessing energies their own scientists barely understood. They were shown building cities inside volcanoes, underwater habitats, floating cities above the oceans, and even vessels that explored stars. And through it all, humanity never stopped helping each other, never abandoned those in need, never gave up. The aliens staggered backward. One shrieked almost instinctively, "No species! No species could do this. They are gods among mortals." The humans shook their head. No, they are not gods. They are something much more dangerous. They are alive. They are real. And they endure where gods could not. The reality hit the aliens fully. They had expected to be mentors. They had expected to catalog, to teach, to control. Instead, they had been shown a species that defied every expectation. A species that had endured impossible odds time and time again. Every calculation they had made about humans was now meaningless. One pupil whispered, trembling, We cannot fight them. Not even together. Not even with all our knowledge." The human smiled faintly, eyes hard. "And that, my students, is exactly why you are here. Not to judge them. Not to challenge them. But to witness them. To understand that there are forces in the universe you cannot predict, cannot dominate, and cannot destroy. And sometimes the greatest lesson is humility." Another alien trembled, eyes wide. "Humans, they terrify us. Because we cannot stop them." The orb dimmed again, leaving only a lingering glow in the pupils' minds. The classroom was silent except for the sound of alien breathing, or whatever was closest to it. The weight of what they had witnessed pressed down upon them, leaving fear, awe, and a strange, reluctant respect intertwined in every fiber of their being. The human's voice cut through the stillness, gentle but firm. "Tomorrow you will see more. You will see what humans do when the universe itself turns against them. You will see how they survive when every law you know says they should fail. The aliens shivered, realizing they had only begun to grasp the scope of humanity's power. They had traveled light years thinking themselves teachers, but now they were mere observers, pupils of a species that could bend the universe with sheer determination, chaos, and courage. Outside, Earth's winds howled against the windows. Thunder rolled across mountains, rivers swelled, and fires burned in distant forests. Humanity endured as always. And the aliens, once confident, once superior, were beginning to understand that some lessons could terrify as much as they enlightened. And they had only just begun. The orb's glow filled the classroom again. But this time the images were different. They were not about cities or wars, not about storms or floods, not even about the cleverness of humans against impossible odds. They were about individuals, faces, moments, lives. A human child, no older than 10, ran through a burning street to save a small animal trapped under rubble. A young soldier, exhausted and wounded, refused to leave the side of a fallen comrade, lifting them with trembling arms as explosions tore the landscape apart. A mother held her crying child while crossing a river swollen with floodwaters, singing softly to keep fear at bay. The aliens recoiled, stunned into silence. One whispered, voice trembling, They risk themselves. For each other. For nothing. Nothing. The human teacher stepped closer, voice low and unwavering. Yes, this is humanity. This is why Earth endures. Not because they are strong. Not because they are fast. Not because they have weapons that could destroy entire worlds. Humans endure because they care. Because they act even when the outcome is uncertain. Because they choose hope when the universe offers none. The aliens' multifaceted eyes reflected the images of bravery and compassion. Their species had always relied on logic, strength, and intellect. Sacrifice without gain was foreign to them. Yet humans performed it constantly, instinctively, without hesitation, without guarantee of survival. A senior alien trembled, their tentacles coiling tightly around their body. This is madness. No species should survive like this, against such odds. And yet, the human smiled faintly, almost sadly. Yet they do. That is their greatest power. Every act of courage, every choice to help, every refusal to surrender, it creates a chain reaction. One life saved becomes many. One act of hope inspires thousands. They are fragile, yes, but they are unbreakable in spirit. Another image appeared, a devastated village after an earthquake. Rubble everywhere, screams echoing, and yet humans worked together without hesitation, lifting stones, forming chains, offering water, comforting the injured. No leader dictated action. No master plan was necessary. Each human acted, and the actions combined into something far greater than themselves. The youngest alien whispered, voice quivering, They are alive. Not just physically, but inside. Their hearts. Their will. It cannot be measured. The human nodded. You see it now, don't you? Humans survive not because they are perfect. They survive because they choose to. They survive because they love, because they fear, because they hope, and because they refuse to let darkness define them. And every time they rise, every time they endure, every time they astonish, the aliens shivered. They had expected logic, strategy, and strength. Instead, they had encountered raw determination, courage, and empathy, forces that defied calculation. Their species had evolved over millennia, yet none had ever faced anything like this. One alien's voice cracked, almost in despair. We are scholars, but we cannot teach this. This cannot be taught. It must be lived. Yes, the human said, their gaze steady. And that is why you are here. Not to lecture, not to catalog, not to conquer. You are here to witness, to understand, to learn that survival, courage, and hope are not merely skills or strategies. They are choices. And humans make them every day against odds you cannot even imagine. Images shifted to humans helping each other across planets, through wars, through disasters, through the extremes of the universe itself. Each act of courage, each moment of compassion added to a chain no enemy, no disaster, no cosmic force could break. A tentacle twitched nervously. They are unstoppable because they care. The human teacher stepped back, letting the orb's light dim. Silence filled the room. The alien pupils stared at one another, understanding fully for the first time that humans were not merely a species. They were a force of will, a tapestry of courage, resilience, and compassion woven across time. One pupil finally muttered, voice shaking, We thought we knew strength. We thought we understood survival. But this isn't something else. The human's voice was gentle but firm. Yes, something else. And now you know it. And knowing changes you. Outside, Earth's storms raged, volcanoes roared, rivers swelled, and humanity endured. Not because the universe was kind, not because they were invincible, but because they refused to be broken. And the alien pupils, once confident in their superiority, understood for the first time that some forces in the universe could not be measured, predicted, or controlled. Humans. They were chaos. They were hope. They were terror. They were unstoppable. And the lesson was far from over. The orb pulsed brighter than ever, filling the classroom with light so intense the alien pupils had to shield their eyes. This time the images were no longer of Earth alone. They spanned worlds, systems, and even the void of space itself. The aliens gasped collectively. Entire planets were shown teetering on the brink of destruction. Supernovae, collapsing stars, rogue asteroids, alien predators beyond comprehension. And in the midst of these disasters, humans, not merely surviving but adapting, thriving and fighting. A city floated in the orbit of a gas giant, suspended by ingenious energy fields. Humans harvested the storm-lashed planet below for resources. In another system, humans wrestled with interstellar beasts that could obliterate whole colonies with a single strike. Entire fleets were constructed on the fly to evacuate millions, repurpose abandoned ships, and turn catastrophe into survival. They are everywhere, even where life should not exist, whispered one alien, their multiple eyes wide in disbelief. They defy extinction, defy physics. The human instructor's voice was calm, almost serene. Humans do not recognize impossibility. They face death, destruction, and the void itself, and they refuse to yield. Every time the universe tests them, and every time, they respond with ingenuity, courage, and unity. Another alien's tentacle twitched violently. We have studied galactic survival, civilizations that have lasted millions of years. None could do this. None could endure the cosmos like this. And yet humans. Images shifted again. Humans were rebuilding a world devastated by an alien invasion. Entire ecosystems had been destroyed. Cities were leveled. Food and water were scarce. And still, humans organized relief efforts, re-engineered the planet's infrastructure, and fought back the invaders with a combination of strategy, improvisation, and sheer determination. They can adapt instantly, stammered the youngest pupil, even against species far superior to them. Yes, said the human, no matter the threat, no matter the scale. Humans do not wait for perfect conditions. They do not require safety, certainty, or advantage. They improvise, they persist, they endure, and through their will they turn despair into opportunity. The aliens' minds raced, struggling to compute what they were seeing. A species so small, so fragile by every biological measure, had faced cosmic-scale threats and survived. They had survived pandemics that annihilated billions, wars that destroyed continents, environmental collapse, and even attacks from alien civilizations far more advanced than Earth. And they had thrived. One pupil finally croaked, They terrify us, because they cannot be stopped. Not by nature, not by war, not by anything. The human stepped forward, eyes glowing in the orb's light. Exactly. That is the lesson you must learn. Every calculation, every prediction, every expectation you've made about life, survival, or strength, humans defy it. They are fragile and they are resilient, weak and they are strong, flawed and they are unstoppable. You've traveled light years, studied countless species, and yet none of them compare. The alien shivered. This was no longer fear born of danger, it was awe, reverence, and a primal terror. They were witnessing a species that could survive not only Earth, but the galaxy itself. A species that could defy extinction on a scale no other life form could comprehend. One pupil's voice broke completely. We cannot fight them. We cannot predict them. We cannot control them. No, said the human softly. You cannot. And that is why humans are not just a species. They are a force of nature. They are chaos and hope and ingenuity and courage all wrapped into one, and when the universe turns against them, they rise. Always. They endure. Always. They astonish. Always. The aliens recoiled, some sinking to the floor in disbelief. The weight of what they had learned pressed down on them like gravity itself. They had expected to be mentors, to teach and catalog, to observe. Instead, they had been shown something beyond comprehension. Humans were small, imperfect, and fragile, and yet no force in the universe could crush them. Outside, across the void of space and the storms of Earth, humanity endured. Rising again, building again, fighting again, even against the impossible, and the alien pupils understood, with a clarity that terrified them. This was a species no one could control, no one could conquer, and no one could truly predict. Humans were not merely alive, humans were inevitable, and the lesson was almost complete. The classroom was silent except for the faint hum of the orb. The alien pupils sat frozen, each tentacle trembling, every eye wide with disbelief. They had seen wars, disasters, ingenuity, compassion, and now, the unimaginable. The orb shifted one final time. It no longer displayed chaos or struggle or survival. It displayed humans standing victorious, not because they were the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced, but because they had refused to give up. Entire civilizations, entire planets, entire worlds had been threatened, and humans had endured. And yet, more than survival, there was something deeper, a spark that no disaster, no alien invader, no cosmic catastrophe could extinguish. Humanity's spirit, their will, their heart, one alien whispered, voice barely audible. We thought this was impossible. But they endure, the human said softly, yet with a power that filled the room. They endure when everything else fails. They endure when logic says they should perish. They endure because that is what it means to be human. They endure because they refuse to surrender to fate, to despair, to the universe itself. Another pupil's tentacles shook violently. They are a force beyond understanding, beyond prediction, beyond geek control. Yes, the human said. And now you know why Earth has survived, why humans have endured countless catastrophes, why they have conquered what should have destroyed them. You are here to witness it, not to fight it, not to teach it, not to challenge it, but to understand it. And when you leave, you will never see the universe in the same way. The aliens' minds reeled. Their species had prided itself on logic, calculation, and superior intellect. They had studied countless civilizations, catalogued countless species, and yet none could compare. Humans were fragile and chaotic. Humans were flawed and unpredictable. Humans were terrifying, but why? The youngest pupil asked, voice trembling. Why do they survive? Why do they rise? When all odds are against them? The human's gaze softened. Because they choose to. Every time. Every day. Every challenge. Every disaster. Every failure. Humans survive not because they must, but because they will. And that will is stronger than anything you have ever known. The aliens sat in silence, their bodies quivering with a mixture of fear, respect, and awe. For the first time, they understood the truth of what they had come to study. Humans were not merely another species in the galaxy. Humans were chaos incarnate, hope embodied, and determination perfected through adversity. The human stepped back, letting the orb's glow fade. Remember this. Humans are not perfect. They fail, they falter. They make mistakes that could destroy them. But in every failure, they find strength. In every disaster, they find a solution. In every death, they find life. That is humanity. That is what makes them unstoppable. One alien finally spoke, voice breaking with revelation and fear. We came to teach, to guide, to observe, and now we are pupils of a species that terrifies even the stars. The human nodded. Good, let it terrify you. Let it humble you. Because understanding humans is not a lesson in knowledge, it is a lesson in awe, in courage, and in the unbreakable spirit of life itself. Outside, earth storms raged, volcanoes roared, oceans surged, and humanity endured. Rising, building, fighting, loving, surviving. Every challenge became a new lesson, every disaster a new opportunity. And the alien pupils, once confident in their knowledge and superiority, understood at last. Some forces cannot be measured, cannot be predicted, cannot be contained. Humans. They were fragile. They were flawed. They were unpredictable, and yet they were unstoppable. The aliens left the classroom that day changed forever. Their notes, their calculations, their strategies, all meaningless against the truth of humanity. They had come to learn about a species. They left having learned about a force of nature. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, as stars collapsed and worlds trembled, humans continued to endure, unyielding, unbroken, and magnificent in ways no other species could ever imagine. The lesson was complete, and the universe would never forget it.